Get even micronutrient distribution across your field with Even Coat technology from Wolftrax. Even Coat technology is designed to uniformly coat each dry fertilizer granule so micronutrients are evenly distributed throughout the blend and across the field. The result is closer proximity to growing roots to prevent soil or weather-induced deficiencies and increase potential for nutrient uptake. Take the Crop Nutrition Challenge to test your knowledge and win at wolftraxmicros.com.
AgriTalk is brought to you by Zypro, delivering stabilized enzymes directly to the soil. Zypro boosts productivity with stronger root growth and increased nutrient uptake.
Opinions expressed on AgriTalk do not necessarily reflect the views of Farm Journal Broadcasting, affiliate stations, or sponsors. Our name says it all. AgriTalk. What more do you need to know?
Welcome back to AgriTalk. I'm your host, Chip Flory. Davis Michelson is with me, and we are both glad that you decided to join us this morning. Welcome.
So glad.
Welcome. Yes.
So glad.
AgriKitty.
AgriKitty joins us.
Nice. All right. Kip Eiderberg is the Senior VP for Government and Industry Relations for the Association of Equipment Manufacturers, and he joins us right now. Kip, welcome back to AgriTalk.
Gentlemen, how are you doing today?
You know, feeling pretty good. I think we're probably going to get a little bit of sunshine before the end of the day and before the rain rolls back in for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. But, hey, we'll take a little bit of sunshine this afternoon if we can get it.
That sounds great. I think you've got about the same weather as we do in Washington, D.C., so good luck with all that rain.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay, Kip, we just got off the phone with Greg Peterson, Machinery Pete, talking about some record-crushing used equipment sales that we saw last week. Part of that is out of concern in the farm community that they're just not going to get the equipment that they need from the new equipment that they need for this spring. So they're out there getting a backup tractor right now. So let's start with an update on that. What's the situation, Kip? Are we starting to see it loosen up at all on the supply side?
I wish I had better news. We're not really seeing much progress at the moment. Our industry continues to face some fairly significant headwinds, specifically as it relates to rising input costs for our industry, and that'd be the price of steel primarily. Number two, supply chain bottlenecks. And number three, crushing tariffs. So let me give you an example. I've been traveling around the Midwest the past couple of weeks. I've been to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, that is, Illinois, Indiana, and it is not uncommon to see upwards of 60, 70, 80 pieces of equipment sitting outside a manufacturing facility waiting for that one component, which, in many cases are, microprocessors, chips, but not always. It could be knobs, wiring harnesses, windshields. And so, while we're facing record demand in many cases for our equipment, we are still struggling to deliver that equipment to our customers. And that's not because we don't want it, because we simply cannot get some of the parts and components that are needed to make that equipment.
Yeah. Kip, I think that the attitude is that most of what is missing are the chips, the microprocessors. But you're saying it's more than that.
Yeah, it is, and as I said, right, it could be as something basic as a knob, that goes into the cab of a tractor. It certainly could be big things too, like windshields. We've seen a shortage of those recently, and really it's due to a couple of things. Number one, we still got a lot of bottlenecks at our nation's ports, which is obviously having then an impact on our industry, being able to get those parts and components from, let's say, the Port of Seattle or the Port of Savannah, Port of Baltimore, to manufacturing facilities that are, typically located inland, right, and in many cases in rural communities. So it's a little difficult to get them there. And then, you layer in infrastructure that is still not where it needs to be. And then we've got fortunately, some practices right now in the shipping industry where it pays more for a shipping company to move empty containers back to Asia rather than having them sit for another day in ports that we can then unload our equipment, right, that's going to our customers in that same region. And so it is really difficult right now to find containers.
Right. Sounds to me like you're in favor of the Ocean Shipping Reform Act.
I thought you'd never ask. Yeah, we certainly are. And we are grateful to Senators Klobuchar and Thune for leading that effort. It was great to see it pass both House of the Senate. Now it's heading to conference. And hopefully with a little luck, we can wrap that into the larger China competition bill that we've been working on and get all of that passed. And that obviously would include the CHIPS Act. You mentioned semiconductors. That's a historic amount of money to try to bring and some of that manufacturing back to the U.S. and try to incentivize companies to make more things in America, which certainly would help alleviate some of our supply chain issues.
Right. Okay. You mentioned an increase in steel prices. I guess the follow-up to that is, again, why?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked that. So just to put into context, before the COVID-19 pandemic, we were looking at 600-700 a metric ton for hot rolled coil. It went up to 1,500 during the pandemic. It peaked at around 2,000. It came down. We've seen it come down. It came down fairly significantly a few weeks ago. You were looking again at 1,500. Obviously, that's not back to the 600 where we were. But now it's starting to trickle up again towards the sort of the 2,000 range. And I think it's a combination of factors. Obviously, the geopolitical situation with the war in Ukraine right now, that's having an impact, particularly on the price of European steel. But beyond that, we can't really see any good reasons for why it should be hovering around $2,000. The Europeans have been able to make as good of a product for pretty much the duration of the pandemic for almost half the cost. So we're kind of scratching our heads over here and going, well, we like to support U.S. steel manufacturers as much as anyone, but $2,000 a metric ton it's a little steep at the moment. So
okay. I'll give you this, Kip. You know how to write a headline for your editorials. Because when you write a headline that says, "Why does Congress want China to win?" people are probably going to read that. What's the guts of that one?
Well, that's that big, massive China competition bill, right? Formerly known as the Endless Frontier Act, and it became USICA competes. Now the White House is calling it the Bipartisan Investment Act, Innovation Act, rather, BIA. So that's the large bill that Congress has been trying to pass now for some time, really trying to do a couple of things: incentivize American research and development, bringing more manufacturing back to the U.S. Through the CHIPS Act, notably when it comes to semiconductors, and then really trying to hold China's feet to the fire a little bit, and when it comes to some of China's industrial and trade policy practices, so starting to address intellectual property theft and some of the other things that have really plagued our industry and many industries that have been doing business in China, trying to compete with China. So we're hoping, always got to be optimistic when you live and work in Washington, but we're hoping that the Senate and the House can put their differences aside and get this passed here in the next couple of weeks.
Kip, some of the supply chain components that we're missing that you're talking about, and I'm going to speak directly about chips.
Sure.
What's the timetable on getting production ramped up in the U.S., ramped up in Mexico, ramped up in Central America, to the point that we can lose some of the reliance on China?
That's the $1 million question, and I think it depends obviously on what you're trying to make, right? Obviously, making microprocessors is a little bit more complicated than, let's say, making a wiring harness. I'm exaggerating a little bit here, but obviously it's going to depend on what you're trying to make, right? And where you're trying to make it. And we've seen a lot of companies step up their production, both in the United States and Mexico and in Europe during the pandemic, to try to circumvent the supply chain challenges, right, and getting things from Asia. But, it's not going to happen overnight, unfortunately, but that doesn't mean that we can't start today. And the way we do start is by passing this bill, right, to say, hey, we're serious about incentivizing companies to manufacture more things in China. And back to the headline, I appreciate you calling that out. I think we've been too afraid to really call out China for their practices. And I think we've been reluctant to look ourselves in the mirror and say, what are we really doing about this? And the reality is that we haven't. We've allowed them to get away with murder for too long. And that's not to say that we don't need a global economy. We obviously do. And we want to sell our equipment, not just to farmers here in America, but around the world. And the reality, too, as you know, is that there's going to be some things that are going to make more sense for us to import than to make here. But overall, we need to make sure that we have the policies in place that we can compete with China. Because I can tell you this, I bet you any farmer that you ask, any manufacturer that you ask, will tell you that, with just a little bit of help, and sometimes that means the government staying out of our business, we can outcompete the Chinese any day of the week.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the Farm Bill. Do you think that House Ag Chairman Scott is going to try to get something done before this fall's elections? And what is AEM doing to prepare for that?
Well, right now, we've seen most of the action actually in the Senate. So Chairwoman Stabenow and Ranking Member Bozeman have really been working together in a bipartisan fashion that is rare to see in Washington, and which we appreciate, trying to come up with their shared priorities for the Farm Bill. We were excited to host them at our inaugural Ag on the Mall event a couple of weeks ago to really highlight our priorities. And, you asked about them. What we really need as equipment manufacturers, we need the Precision Agricultural Loan Act to be passed, and that will help incentivize the adoption of more precision agriculture technology, which we believe are good for farmers and the environment. We need expanded broadband access for rural Americans. Yeah. And we need a strong, robust safety net for American farmers, because when they succeed, we succeed. So we got to look out for them.
So evolutionary on this Farm Bill, not revolutionary, except for the support for rural broadband. That hasn't, it's been in there before, but not with the kind of spending that we're talking about now, right?
No, that's exactly right. And look, one thing we've learned from the pandemic, right, is that not only do we depend on it, for modern precision agriculture, and obviously to make some of the equipment right in rural America, our factories depend on connectivity, but rural Americans depend on connectivity for the homeschooling, for telehealth, for just paying your bills. And so we owe it to everyone who lives in rural America to invest in broadband connectivity for them.
Good stuff. Kip, thank you so much for making time for us today. We really appreciate it.
Hey, always appreciate it. Have a great rest of the week, and stay dry out there.
Yeah, good luck with that. Thank you, Kip. That's Kip Heidelberg. He is the Senior VP for Government and Industry Relations for the Association of Equipment Manufacturers. Okay, Davis and I will be back to wrap up this week's first hour of AgriTalk in a moment.